Welcome in to week 11/10 / the end of week 10 into 11. How it always works out for us. Shouldn't be any surprise, of course. Kind of odd. Another early morning game happening this week. This time, instead of Berlin, we are going to Madrid. So that's a different one. But as always, we are here to help you figure out who you need to pick up, who's going to be your asset, and who's going to be hurting you, who's worth the while, and who is not. I'm Jason Draven, and with me is Mike. As always, how's it going, Mike?
Yeah, going well. I think it's our last European game, I believe, right? So that to look forward to. Unless you enjoy those European games and you get, 20 plus hours of football from, whatever time it starts in the morning till Sunday night football ends. But yeah, it's good to be here. I can't believe we're already, we're in the home stretch here. 4 more weeks for most people, and it's playoff time.
Yeah, and that's just crazy. I mean, it's, again, the weird offseason.
Yeah.
People holding out, people already getting hurt, people not practicing. It's a mess everywhere. But we'll figure it out. Shouldn't be any surprise. But so everybody knows, no Saints and no Colts this week. You probably Alec Pierce was one of the big issues. Pittman, Taylor. You're definitely going to be missing Taylor. That one hurts.
Yeah. Tyler Warren, but mostly Colts, and then Olave.
Yeah, Olave.
Well, Juwan Johnson.
Yeah, and then finally, the other one that I'm not quite sure if I believe it or not, but Kamara this time looked so much better.
Sure.
So.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Tyler Shuck, this isn't a Saints podcast, but Tyler Shuck, he looked pretty good for his first or second start.
Yeah, and so he continues to look fine. And, if they actually continue to give Kamara the work, it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But just is what it is. All right. Well, with that, we will move into our quarterback streamers of the week / stashes / whatever. Shouldn't be any surprise. I'm going back to Sam Darnold. I know he hurt you this week, but that's not his fault. That defense just stepped up in such a big way. I mean, they put up 38 points, something ridiculous. Too many points to count. But yeah. It's just crazy. That team is playing so well, and he's doing such a good job with it overall. It's just tough to get away from him. But 47.8% rostered, still too low. We're below the 50% mark still. And then the other one, Joe Flacco. It just continues to be available. 45.9% rostered. Again, the fact that he continues to just sling that thing everywhere was likely dropped due to the bye. I mean, but this week they get to go on, and you saw what the Chargers did against the surprising Steelers. How that worked out, I'm not quite sure, but grabbed a win, and so we're moving forward with it. And I think Flacco again. Steelers are beat up on defense, so gives you a lot of opportunities. But
yeah,
who do you have, Mike?
Yeah, I think it's a good week for quarterback streamers if you need it, but unfortunately, only 2 teams on a bye, and you probably weren't starting Tyler Shuck, and then Daniel Jones. He's definitely on your team, but it'd be nice if there's a few more teams on bye and take advantage of this good streamer week for quarterbacks. But I'll talk about Rodgers first, because you were just talking about Flacco and playing the Steelers. Well, so Rodgers playing the Bengals, so really good matchup as we've seen. In the past, I think they're top 7 or so, most points allowed for quarterbacks. Could be a shootout as well if Flacco and these two played just a few weeks ago, right? And it was a big shootout. So
yeah, massive game for both players.
Yeah, so we could get that again potentially. We'll see. Hopefully there's no weather to worry about. It's that time of the year where we got to start looking at that stuff. Can't look at it now; it's way too early, unless you live in California and you can see the weather from 2 weeks out. But where these games are being played, you have to wait a couple days before, or day before. But yeah, I like that matchup and targeting that game. And then Tua, I love Tua this week playing the Commanders. 4th most points given up to quarterbacks are the Commanders. We've seen Tua. They surprisingly beat the Bills in Miami. So that was awesome to see. Are they a little bit motivated to obviously, these players are motivated to win and stuff like that, but they haven't given up yet. So, two threw for 2 touchdowns, only 175 yards, but you're hoping you get one of those games where he goes for 250 and at least two, and we know he's capable of throwing 3 or 4 touchdowns as well if everything clicks there. And this might be the week against the Commanders.
Yeah, my only worry about that is they're the ones traveling. Both those teams are the ones
Yeah,
traveling to Spain. We'll see how it works out, but that makes me a little more cautious on it because I agree. I do think that the opportunity is there. This should be a good game for him, but when it comes to going overseas and that weird early time and everybody getting used to the time change, it's a lot.
yeah,
So,
yep,
but
agreed.
still good streamers, a lot of good options. If anybody ends up dropping Daniel Jones, I would definitely be looking to pick that up because that could also be another thing that I'm willing to play moving forward as well. Just things to watch out for. All right, out of quarterback, into running back, and shouldn't be any surprise. I'm going back to the player who probably got dropped everywhere because the Chiefs went on by Kareem Hunt, 45.3% rostered. Also was dealing with injury. I mean, it's one of those things, but he continues to get the quality work that you want out of that running back. He gets the high value touches, and so it's very interesting to see how that ends up working out for him. And again, 45.3% rostered. It's granted he does get the Broncos, but it could be a good game for him because when you're looking at it, passing downs, scoring, that's where he's in. So it definitely makes it a more competitive game, and will be interesting to see how much he gets used this round.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting week for running backs. Like I feel like it's kind of been like this all year. We haven't, we had a couple here and there, but it's just a lot of handcuffs. Like it just feels like it's a big handcuff type of week. And again, we're getting to that point as we progress through the buys. We say it each and every week. Start handcuffing your guys. It's never too early to start doing that. So Blake Corum's of the world, Algiers of the world, Brian Robinsons and stuff like that are guys to potentially handcuff. So I have those guys on the list. Tajay Spears, they were on a bye. The Titans were. They're kind of in a 50-50 split for the most part, and Spears, I don't know. He seems to get at least the catches. He gets a little bit more. That's the feeling at least. I think Pollard's going to get a lot of the early down work, whereas Spears is going to get a little bit more catches. He has three catches in 3 straight games, 4 catches. Basically, since he's come back, he has 4 catches, three, and three. So, he's good for that at least in PPR. He's probably going to give you 20 to 30 yards on those catches unless he busts off a big one. So, you kind of have a safe floor there a little bit. He kind of gives you a 6-7 point floor there. And then, he'll get some rushes as well, maybe a touchdown. So don't mind Spears in PPR leagues to kind of pick him up in desperation type of flex play. Michael Carter, still no news really on Trey Benson. And Bam Knight left with an injury. So maybe we get a game with Michael Carter being the guy. I know DeMercado's still out there as well. Maybe he's the guy you want to go out there and pick up as well. So, some options there for sure. But DeMercado caught 3 passes this last week against Seattle. So, Arizona running back and backfield is something to look at. I don't want to start it, but I guess you can get worse. You can do worse. So, and then Sean Tucker for the Buccaneers. We just got the update today that Bucky is no timetable. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. We might not see him for a while. Sean Tucker is someone who we've seen be successful before. We saw him get a little bit more work this week. And so do they continue to kind of work him in a little bit more? Rashad White's never he's never been the most efficient runner. Whereas I feel like Sean Tucker, if he gets a little bit more of the early down work, he can see a little bit more explosiveness, keep Rashad White in his role of more of a pass catcher, and maybe that's the way they want to go. So he's gotten over 30% of the snaps each of the last 2 weeks. Sean Tucker has, so he's getting worked in just a bit more.
Yeah, it's definitely a slight uptick. I mean, most of these with the exception of Spears right now, are seeing an uptick in their usage. Spears is kind of, I'm guessing, close to being capped out at how often they're going to use him. But Tucker and Corum, we saw them keep getting more and more touches, and it's just been crazy to see that. It's definitely frustrating the managers of White, Irving, and of course Kyron Williams, because that's just brutal to deal with. But I still think that of them, I mean, I really like what I'm seeing out of Tucker the most, especially now that we don't know. He's widely available. I figured you'd bring him up because you like your deeper stashes and a little more knowledgeable in that area. So I was like, oh, you'll definitely have more to talk about on that one. But
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's always we saw him last year. Sean Tucker, he had a huge game. One of the better running back games we've seen. But then he kind of like did nothing after that. So that is always a little telling. It's like, well, they're seeing him every day. Do they not really trust him or something? But I feel like they want to get a little bit more out of this run game. I think that especially with just the injuries to the weapons and the passing game for Baker and the Bucks, like get this run game going and help this offense help Baker out a little bit.
yeah, especially that and just trying to keep White healthy so that they can have both of them, because that's definitely the tandem that they want to keep rolling out. But all right, we'll get out of running back into wide receivers, where it just seems to be things that are everywhere. More and more people are starting to show up, play roles that we were expecting. And I'm going to go back to the well with Tez Johnson, 37.6% rostered, still too widely available. And now with Godwin being out even longer, they continue to push that off, talking about timetables. Tez Johnson's clearly there. Granted, 2 of his catches were for touchdowns, which you can't count on every week, but it's definitely something that I'm keeping an eye on. And then talking about sticking with the younger players, I'm going to go Jaden Higgins, 15.8% rostered. Saw a massive uptick this week in his usage. Granted, he was the one when Collins was out. Last week, he kind of got brought back down to earth, but this week, it was him and Collins going back to back when it came to the snaps and their usage. And if they're going to continue to roll that out, I'm really hopeful for Higgins, because they drafted him to be this, and if he's able to step up, it's a big potential role for him. Then finally, the guy who's on bye, but you have to pay attention to, because talking about upticks, Alec Pierce is the wide receiver 2 on that team this week. Played the most snaps, ran the most routes. It's just crazy, and he is delivering. If he's going to be seeing 7 targets every game, man, it's going to be very difficult for me not to start him every week, because that big plays, easy to score, talented wide receiver. It's one of those things. It's a quarterback that has became a wide receiver, and it really shows just how freakishly talented he is. But as Neil likes to say, he's here for a good time, not a long time, and it's been that way for a bit, because he constantly is hurt. And so if he can stay healthy, he's definitely somebody I want to have on my team. Well, what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I like your picks a lot. Tez Johnson and Alec Pierce in particular, and with Tez, you mentioned, like, I think you said 4 targets, 2 touchdowns, and that's kind of how like Jalen McMillan was last year on that last like 6 weeks. It was like, oh, he's catching touchdowns every game, but only 4 or 5 passes. Emeka Ibuka to start the year when Mike Evans was there was kind of like that. So they kind of just have a receiver that does that, and maybe now it's Tez Johnson with Emeka Ibuka taking a bigger role, obviously. So. But yeah, I'll throw Darius Slayton out there. I'm hoping it's Jackson Dart or Jameis Winston. I hope it's one of them. If it's Jameis Winston, I'm excited, really excited for all these weapons. But Slayton's been playing well. 4 for 89 yesterday, 5 for 62 the week before. He's giving you some production here in this wide receiver room. But obviously it's been Malik Neighbors is out, and so they need someone to kind of pick up the slack there. So I don't mind Slayton as kind of like, I kind of look at him as a little bit of like a poor man's Pierce or Johnson, whereas like the offense isn't as good. So I'm going to trust those guys more often than not. But I think like if you plugged Slayton into the Colts offense, he would put up similar numbers to what like Alec Pierce is doing or what Tej Johnson's doing with the Bucks. So it's basically like those options, but a kind of a worse offense. And we'll see how the offense changes as well as Dayball got fired. So maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. I have no idea. Luther Burden, I'll throw him out there. You've been talking about him a lot of just like, it's more of a stash at this point. You can't trust it. He did have 3 for 51 in last week's game. We've seen a couple games here and there of him. I think he's a talented rookie. He did bump up to almost 50% of the snap shares. Zacchaeus had like some terrible drops and stuff in this game. I think they had like 6 drops in this game, and Zacchaeus was had some bad ones, and so that would be Burden. He would take over that role. Do they just kind of move on a little bit and say, okay, like I understand why Zacchaeus was kind of starting and getting a lot of the run there because he's a professional wide receiver and he's reliable, but at some point you got to be like this guy Luther Burden can. He can give us so much more production than what a guy like Olamide Zacchaeus can do. So, do we see that change start to happen? And then Kyle Williams, I'll throw him out there. I threw him out there last week. He had a big catch. He only had 1 catch, but it was a 72-yard touchdown pass. I thought, when I saw that early on in the game, I was like, okay, here we go. Like, it was a good call. And then he did nothing else. But he still was playing a good amount. He was at over 55% of the snaps. I think that 72-yard touchdown pass, like, do they look at that just like, Travion playing well for them and say, hey, maybe we should start getting some of these younger guys more involved? And so it's a little bit of a stretch there. I don't think you can really rely on starting him, but you're tying yourself to one of the best quarterbacks in the league on a team where they need that type of production. So I guess the same person on that team, Mac Hollins, he kind of filled that Kayshawn Booty role. So if Booty's out again, he's not on IR, is he? I don't think he is, but. If he's out again, then maybe even a guy like Mac Hollins might not be a terrible deep play.
Yeah, I mean, and Holland's been again somebody who's quietly been boosted up, and it's just been crazy to kind of see the weird usage. It's one of those things that I'm always surprised. Like the All-Made Zacchaeus, like that's another one that I'm just like, man, that's such an odd choice. But yeah, I don't think Booty was placed on IR for sure. I'm trying to double check that, but
yeah, I don't think he was. And it is weird because to us we see it and we're just like, well, really, Mac Hollins, he's been in the league forever, but he just does things. These guys do things that rookies need to learn how to do. A lot of it's like blocking in the run game and just being that they have a certain role they can play. Like Hollins was doing this with the Bills last year too, and where he'd have these games where he would pop. This one's a little bit different. He had 10 targets, so he definitely might be a guy to kind of go out there and stash for sure.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Really liking what I see from Kyle Williams and Luther Burden. I mean, they're both players that are super impressive. So again, we're talking about a lot of younger players here, and it's not surprising they're coming on and really showing out. All right. But we'll get out of wide receiver into tight ends. Shouldn't be any surprise. I'm going with straight stashes at this point because can't get off of Juwan Johnson. 30% rostered. Again, a second option on the team. Seeing a lot of targets, a lot of great usage. And then, of course, I had to bring it up because he's activated. Brenton Strange. The window is open. I'm very curious to see how his practice log looks this week and if he becomes available because the Jaguars definitely need that help. But if he's available, definitely somebody you should look at because he's only 17.6% rostered. So very widely available. He was one of the top producers when he was there with Lawrence, and I don't think that would change even right now. That's part of the reason that Myers is stepping into a role immediately, and he's the one who actually had the most yards this week for the Jaguars at wide receiver in his first week there. I mean, it wasn't even a full one. So very impressive, and just definitely things you want to keep an eye on or see if they're dropped and try and pick them up ahead of Sunday's games or whatever works out best for you. But just how it is for me. I actually like your choices a lot better for actual streamers this week or usage this week. So go ahead and talk about them.
Yeah, I'll throw Loveland, Colston Loveland out there again for the Bears. Again, talked about him last week. He obviously had the big game in week 9, 6 for 118 and 2 touchdowns. Even without that big touchdown he had at the end, he still would have had a good game. Follows it up 4 for 55, kind of ho hum, slightly above average tight end numbers. But the biggest issue was that he played less. Cole Kmet came back and healthy and played in a decent amount. So we saw Loveland, who was playing 80% of the snaps the last previous 2 weeks, drops to just above 60%, which is usually tough to rely on. So kind of monitor that. He was still targeted a decent amount on his routes. Like he only had 4 targets, but when he was running just over half the amount of routes that the Bears were, half of their passing plays, it kind of equates to a decent target percentage when he was out there. So, and I just again, he was a first round pick. He's talented, and I think he could have a stretch of games where he plays really well for you, maybe in the fantasy playoffs. And then Dalton Schultz, I feel like he's kind of sneaky under the radar like season for Dalton Schultz, but 7 for 53, 11 targets. Now that was with Davis Mills. If CJ Stroud's back, is he going to target him as much? I don't know, but he did get targeted 8 times against Denver when Stroud was playing. Or I guess Stroud left pretty early in that game, right?
Yeah.
So it could be a Davis Mills. Like if Davis Mills plays, then you definitely want to start Schultz. But even then, like I think Schultz is probably going to give you a pretty safe floor of 8-ish PPR points, and then you hope he has a little bit more, catches a touchdown, which he did this last week. So. But yeah, kind of a little bit underrated season for Schultz. He's averaging 5 catches and almost 50 yards a game this year. So that's pretty good numbers for a kind of a low end tight end.
Yeah, and I'll bring it up just in case he does play. But if Dart does end up playing this week, I'm going to bring up Theo Johnson, widely available,
Yeah.
39.1% rostered. Could be an active weapon for him. He really seems to look for him pretty often. And then I'm going to have a discussion with you because Chargers are probably going to be out.
Yeah.
Aronda Gadsden. Do you want any of the Chargers' other tight ends? I think it would be Tyler
Man,
Conklin, but I'm not sure.
yeah, that's the problem. Like it could just be like I think it would be Conklin, but like I don't like in terms of which tight end will catch more passes, but I think Disley's also going to play a decent amount. I was so excited about Conklin heading into the season. I thought he was a big time sleeper. That didn't play out, obviously, so I probably just want to avoid it. I was thinking about that too, and it sucks to see Gadsden potentially go down. Do we get news on the severity of that yet, or
No, it says week to week. I'm going to guess he probably doesn't play this week because I think it was a
yeah,
hyperextension. I don't think, or no, they said it was a bruised thigh actually, or bruised, something like that, hamstring maybe.
yeah,
But in any case, it looked like
okay,
he just hyperextended his knee, and that always is scary. But that hit was in a weird spot as well, and so with all of
yeah,
that, I'm like, he could probably play, but do we really need him this week? We have the bye coming up. I don't know. So it'll be
yeah,
very interesting to see. Because I know that Fisk was the one I saw out more on the field, but
mm,
Tyler was the one who actually caught a pass.
hmm,
Because I don't think Fisk did. I think it was the running back, Matlock, who caught the pass. Or no, was it
yeah, yeah.
Fisk?
That's no. I think you're right. I
Okay.
think it was. Yeah,
So
um,
and he's a
yeah,
fullback, so it doesn't really count. But it's still just the availability of him. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that
yeah.
works out.
And then again, like you throw Disley into, I know he was like a healthy scratch, but he's healthy, so like he probably gets activated if Gadsden's out as well, and that could just kind of muddy the waters a little bit. So yeah, probably avoiding it altogether. So what about Kate Otten? He's pretty widely available, right? I'm seeing here
31.9.
30%.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and he had a big game, 9 for 82. I think I didn't realize he had that big of a game. He's actually had kind of 5 straight weeks of really good games, so he's definitely someone to go out there and grab if he's out there because Evans is still out, Godwin's still out, so yeah, I mean, he might actually be, now that I see, kind of missed that, how good he's been the last 5 weeks. He might be my number one priority if you need to start this coming week.
Yeah, definitely somebody I was going to end up bringing up, but because, however, it was the second half that he kind of started up because the first half it was a slow. I think he only got 2 targets, but I think he ended with 6 or 8, something like that. I always hate when yeah. Sorry, I thought you were looking at it, but
in the game he had 12. In the game he
Oh.
had 12.
okay.
Yeah, I didn't realize he had 12 either. I totally just kind of overlooked that. So I don't know how many of those came kind of in that second half or not. I know they were in a little bit of a back and forth there near the end. So yeah, he's done well. I mean, 12 basically, like, he's given you double digit PPR points almost 4 of the last 5 weeks. Hasn't caught a touchdown either, and obviously he can always do that. So yeah, I'm gonna check and make sure he's not out there on all of mine because I kind of overlooked Otten a little bit, to be honest. So it happens.
Yep, definitely does. All right. Well, we had way too much talking there about tight ends. Sorry about that. Just we got a little distracted because I had some questions and we had to follow up and double check on some things. But that in mind, we'll move into defenses. All streamers for me. Shouldn't be any surprise. The one I'm going back to is the Kansas City Chiefs, 31.8% rostered. Again, they were likely dropped because bye week, nobody really cares. However, they are coming back to the Broncos, who, when you look at them offensively, have been struggle busting very hard. And so I'm not willing to trust the Broncos as much, which is also why I'm willing to stream the Chiefs right now, is until that offense gets going and they're able to put up points like they did. Whatever, who were they? The Bears? Is it the Bears that they came back and beat? No, the Giants. They came back and beat the Giants with
Giants.
whatever 40 points in the fourth quarter, which shouldn't happen. And so that's the last time we kind of saw that explosion, and they're going to need it if they're going to end up keeping up with the Chiefs, who are coming off the bye, had an extra week to prepare, get healthy. Not looking forward to this for the Broncos.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be a low scoring game there as well. So I actually went to go write the Chiefs, and then I saw that you had them. So and they're just a good defense. Like, sometimes it's a simple, like, I know we like, a lot of times it is matchup based, but like sometimes you just pick up these defenses and you don't worry too much about who they're playing, because like the Chiefs do have, they get the Colts after that, the Cowboys after that. Like they do have some good offenses over the next few weeks. So, but I probably wouldn't worry too much about it. They're just a good one. So, kind of like the Rams. I'll throw them out there. I didn't write them down here, but I'll throw the Rams out there. They play the Seahawks. That's going to be a fun game. That could be a pretty big defensive game in general there. But like they're just a good defense. Like they were top 5, I think, heading into this week. Not sure where they're going to be at after this week. I know they gave up some points there at the end, and they're just over 50%, the Rams. So I still don't mind them, just because I think their defense is good. What are we feeling about the Chargers? Chargers versus the Jags. I'm not too worried about the Jags in general, but how are we feeling about the Chargers in there?
I always say that,
defense?
and then it feels like a trap again, and we're going to end up getting hurt. And so it always makes me nervous to suggest them, especially against the Jags, who always seem to kind of pull it out and have our number. So I agree. I would tend to agree with you that, yes, this should be the matchup on paper that you want to roll out the Chargers, but it scares me.
Yeah, it just seems like they're playing better. They feel like they're playing better defense and stuff. So,
yeah, got Khalil
so
Mack back.
I mean,
that definitely helped.
yeah, yeah, they're getting a little bit healthier and stuff like that. So I don't mind them. There's not a. I mean, I'm just kind of looking at it. It's not a great week, this week. So I mean, we can go back to anyone against the Titans, but that's the Texans this week. So I'm sure they're pretty rostered across the most leagues and stuff. So also wrote down the 49ers versus the Cardinals. I don't really think the Cardinals are a great offense. So I'm not sure if the 49ers are a good defense either, but I still trust their defensive coordinator, and they have pieces there, and I trust them to potentially put up a good game against the Cardinals. So I don't mind the 49ers either.
Yeah. The one thing is that now I can't remember who the Cardinals played this past week, but now with Brissett in the back, they aren't worried about him running, about having a mobile quarterback, and so they're really able to focus on their wide receivers and coverages and the running backs, so they don't have to worry about the quarterback taking off, and so that's also been a big boost. I'll be very curious to see how the 49ers do because they are still pretty beat up on their defense, but this could be another relatively low scoring game. Definitely not something that I want to have to deal with, but just how is what it is. So it's kind of bare out there when we brought up Houston last week for this reason. You could have had him for 2 weeks; it would have been great for you. But in the off chance that you did do that, I still think it would go. I think that's the order: is Chiefs, Chargers, 49ers. So
yeah, I'm just kind of looking through. I mean, Packers they're playing the Giants, but they're going to be rostered by a lot of people. I think Patriots at this point are probably rostered a decent amount. Yeah, they're over 65%. So a lot of the better defenses are just kind of rostered for this week in particular. So yeah.
All right. Well, with that, we will get out of here. Hope everybody has a good week 10. Hopefully all of your scores go well. Your miracles go on tonight. I need Jacobs to, I think, score at least 1 point for me to win my matchup. The surprise touchdown yesterday from, oh my gosh, I can't even remember the rookie. Somebody, who was I playing? Is it Steve? I don't think it's Steve, actually. But it's somebody in our league actually played Roman Wilson in our Dynasty League, and he scored a touchdown in the last couple minutes. I'm like, oh, of course he does. And so I need 0.7 points to win out of A.J. Brown and Josh Jacobs.
Imagine you just don't get that.
I know. I will be so annoyed.
I think I would. There would be a good chance I just quit fantasy football if that happened.
That would be my luck, though. That always seems to be the case. I'm like, oh, I should have this in the bag. I shouldn't have to worry about it. Nope. Sure enough, somebody gets hurt the first drive or whatever. But oh well. All right. But in any case, hopefully your miracles happen. I'm hoping mine happens. It's a less of a miracle, but a chance. We'll see how it goes. But as always, we will see you next week. I will be back on Wednesday with Neil. And remember, as always, to keep up with the nonsense. Have a good week.